welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. We are in a bit of a different place. My parents have COVID, so I am hiding at my boyfriend's house. So we have a different setting going on today. Hopefully it works out, but the fireplace does have a fan that should turn on at some point, so it could get a little noisy in here. Sorry about that. But today we are doing my March was last month, my March wrap up. I finally need to get around to filming this. It's already halfway through April. I need to get this out for all of you. But before I forget, I'm gonna show you my genre blanket update because I keep forgetting to show this in my wrap-ups. So we already have April on this a little bit, but it is looking pretty good in my opinion. So this is from January to current April, which is about the 10th of April. And I don't know, I'm really liking it. If you are interested in making a genre blanket in the Late Night Crew Discord, which is linked down below, we do have a crocheting channel for our blankets because a bunch of us are making genre blankets or raining blankets or any kind of blanket, and we just wanted to show them off. Little plug to the Late Night Crew Discord. Other than that, let's get right on into things. So, I need to get my handy dandy laptop in front of me. To start off March, the first book I read in March was actually Guild by Raven Kennedy, which you have already seen an in-depth review of in my BookTube Bestie episode 3, where I read Becca and the Book's best and worst books of the year, and saw if we could be BookTube besties. I gave Guild 3 stars. Guild is the first book in the Plated Prisoner series, which is a King Midas retelling. It's a fantasy romance. We are following our main character, who is kind of a trophy to King Midas, and the story just goes on from there. I will say this was not what I had expected. I had previously DNF'd this book. On reread, I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to continue this book. And if you are thinking about reading Guild, I do know there's a fantasy romance book club hosted by Sahar at Basically Bookish Reads, who is reading the Guild series starting in June, which I might have to partake in so that I can finish this series. For my review on Guild, I found that Guild was actually severely lacking the romance portion of it. For a fantasy romance, there is no romance in it. There is a lot of sex in the beginning, but as you go on, that definitely becomes less and less, and you're left kind of waiting for things to happen. There is a lot of tension in this book that I enjoy. There is a surprising element at the end of this book that really picked up my intrigue for the rest of the series, because it's not what you typically would expect from a King Midas retelling. Other than that, the book definitely lulls after about 30%, and there's a little bit of a slump, which is where I had DNF'd it previously. But once you get past the little bit of a lull, it's so good again, and I really enjoyed this. There's a decent plot happening in it, so if you are a plot-driven reader, this could be the fantasy romance for you. Other than that, I have not much else to say. I enjoyed this one. I want to continue reading it. I listened to the audiobook and I did it in about a day. I whizzed through it, so I need to read the next one. After that, my second read of the month was The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. Now, I hated this book. I gave it 2 stars. This is a book on my These Books Will Self-Destruct in 12 Months TBR, so I'm very happy I got it off the list, and I have read it. It has been destructed now. I have unhauled it happily that I gave it a chance. This is a very whimsical, atmospheric read. We're following our protagonist, who is a wolf girl, and the king orders the wolf girl village to sacrifice a wolf girl every couple months, and then they get to keep surviving, otherwise he would wipe them out. So when she is sacrificed, the woodsmen come, something happens to the rest of the woodsmen, and it's just a story between the wolf girl and this one woodsman, who turns out to be more than he seems, as they try to kind of save the magic and a political war. So actually, in my head, this sounds like something I would actually enjoy, but the atmospheric part of it really just brought it down for me. The plot part was actually quite interesting, but I just could not get behind the writing. And also it was very weird to me because my grandmother's name was in this book, who is not a common name. It's Batia. She is Israeli. I didn't actually realize that this book had Jewish mythology in it until I was reading it, and it really just like shocked me when I saw her name in it, because I'm not used to seeing her name in it, whereas someone like my boyfriend, his name is Nick. I'm used to seeing it all over the place, so it just doesn't really pull me out of a story anymore, but that kept pulling me out of a story. Other than that, the execution of this wasn't for me. I think that maybe if you liked the atmospheric elements of The Bear and the Nightingale, you could like this one. It's very whimsical. It's got that magical realism that a lot of books do when they're inspired by someone's culture and someone's mythology. And I definitely can see how the Israeli mythology is pulled into this and why it's so whimsical. But yeah, it was a bit of a shock to me, especially because I got this in a blind date with a book. I would have never picked up this book myself, but it had been a blind date with a book for someone who likes Naomi Novik's writing. And I really should learn, because Naomi Novik is a wide range. I like some of Naomi Novik's writing and I don't like others. And this one leaned to the side of the writing that I don't overly like. The spinning silvers, that stuff. And the third book I read this month was Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This was our officially unofficial book club pick for the late night crew. We all just read it on sprints together and then we talk about it in the Discord. There's no official live show or anything for this. We just pick a book every single month that we all want to read and we read it together. I gave this book 3 stars. I actually did really enjoy this book. There's just such technical aspects of it that were lacking and couldn't let me give this book more than a 3 stars. The story itself I found very intriguing. I have since read the prequel novella in April and I really loved the prequel novella and gave it 5 stars. So this book itself suffers in its writing style. I have a whole vlog where I read self-pubbed indie fantasy books and this is one of the ones I read. So you can check that out for a very in-depth review. But essentially, Of Blood and Fire follows our main character who when a group of mysterious strangers shows up to their small village, he somehow gets thrown into this war that he was never meant to belong in. And he kind of becomes the chosen one, but he's not actually the chosen one because there was no prophecy. He just kind of happened and became, if that makes sense. So it's like an unchosen one, chosen one trope. That makes no sense, but that's how it goes. And this book has a lovely little baby dragon, which is the highlight of this book. The baby dragon, chef's kiss, so cute. And I really did like the mythology, and you can see in this book the hints of other great writers like John Gwynne, like Robert Jordan. You can see all of these like Tolkien inspiration taken, and I think that this series is going to be incredible, but the first book definitely falls prey to some major mistakes and issues. The pacing is really off. We would escalate really quickly and then de-escalate even quicker, so like I didn't get the payoff and the emotional impact of so many things, and then every single character has a name. There's too many characters in this book to remember. It's like the person that you bought an orange from once in this story has a name, and there was no reason for them to have a name. Cats, I'm trying to record here. You're supposed to be better than my cats. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to sound too hard on this one because I actually do want people to pick it up. And as a self-published author, I think that so much of this book's problems were just writing style, and that's the easiest thing to grow on and an editor to help you with. The cats want outside. It's the easiest thing to have a editor help you with and to grow on, and so I'm just very excited for it to continue growing and to see what happens next. And so the next book I read, Fluffy Tale. The next book I read this month was Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson, which is another book I read for my self-pubbed indie fantasy vlog. I gave this book 4 stars. Let me tell you, the prologue of this book is absolutely incredible. The rest of the book is still good, but it definitely has some faults to it. The book is very character driven, and we have 4 main characters who all have a different plot, but there's not really a good overarching plot in this one. I really want to see how all these characters connect together. So Illborn follows a world where we had someone bestowed magic and be given like deity priesthood, and he like saves the world, but then then is sacrificed and died, and thousands of years later we now have 4 protagonists who have started to receive these special powers that are very similar to what the god priest deity had. There becomes a problem with the church looking for them and trying to get rid of them. And it's just like this very toxic church atmosphere. If you don't like books that focus heavily on religion and pull heavily from a Christianity side, this book is probably not for you. For someone like me, I really enjoyed it, and I think that they talk about religion and they talk about the negative sides of religion so well in this, and they talk about how religion can so easily escalate to a point that people are burning on stakes again, and not to say that religion is bad or anything, but they're just talking about how there is that aspect to it when people take it to such an extreme. The big negatives in this book for me were that women's body type is always described. That's something that typically doesn't bother me, but I noticed it so much in this book. I was like, why do we always talk about the figure of the women characters that we see during this, even if we see them once, but the men are never described? Like, I could just tell it was written by a man. And I just felt like his women POVs weren't as fleshed out as the men one were, and there's one POV that specifically her journey kind of irked me. And if you have a trigger warning for like sex work, this is not the book for you. But I'm hoping to see her character grow a lot in the next book, and it is set up for her to grow a lot at the ending of this book, so I'm still hoping for a lot. This is falling down my head. And also, I really hated that every single character has a romance plot. I feel like I don't need every character to have romance. I prefer some of them don't. I like reading about romance, but I also don't at the same time, and there is a place for it. And a couple of these POVs, I felt like it really worked to have a romance plot, but some of them I was just like, this is not necessary. We don't need one. And other than that, I will say I did enjoy this, and I have been pushing it on people. I think that it is very interesting, and the world created is very cool, and I'm very excited to see where it goes from here, so you should definitely pick it up. But those were some of my thoughts on it. After that, I read The Swordsmans Lament by G.M. White. I loved this book. It was the last book I read for the first episode of reading self-pubbed indie fantasy. This book, I give it a very high 4 stars, and I still think about upping that to a 5 all the time because I just enjoyed this book so much. If you are a fan of Sebastian de Castel's writing and the Traitor's Blade series in particular, I think that you will like this. Our main character in this just holds himself the way a greatcoat does, and I think he would fit in perfectly with them, like perfectly. This is a book about a knight who is kind of like the king's personal guard, and he's getting old and thinking about retiring, so he's looking for a replacement. But when a murder happens in the castle, he has to figure out who does it, not only to help figure out this murder, but also to clear his own name. This book is a little predictable, but that didn't take away from my enjoyment at all, because it's just written in such a way that you're along for the ride and you're just like enjoying every second with these characters. And I'm not a character-driven reader. I think of myself as plot-focused, if not world-focused, really. I can enjoy a book that is character-driven as long as it still has a plot, but I can't just do a character-driven book, where I could do a plot-driven book with like not as good characters, if that makes sense to you. I have nothing to say about this book besides that I really loved it and you should read it. I've been pushing it on all my friends lately, and the author did send me a copy for review, and I would like to put that out there, but that in no way changes my mind on this book. This book was just that good that you should go read it. And the next book I read this month was called The Bone Chips by R.J. Barker. I read this for my book club. I read this for my book club, Backlist Book Club. This is the second book in the Died Child trilogy. I had high hopes after the first one, which I had originally given 4 stars, and after we talked about it on the book club live show, I had lowered that to a 3-star, but this one let me down. I gave it a lower 3 stars than the first. This one starts off so good. It starts at peak and then goes down, where I found the first one started low and then went up. I prefer a better ending half to a book than a starting half, if that makes sense. Like, I can forgive a slower, not as great beginning, but because the end of the book is my last like piece of it, I need that to be good, or else I won't remember that the beginning was that good. This one just suffered from so much that the first one did. I'm still completely unsure what the plot of this entire trilogy is. This book falls prey to something that I really don't like to read about, which is when you have to go from point A to point B, but that journey would be way too small. So instead we go from point A to like up here, and then down here, and then up here, and down here, and then up here, and just like little obstacles that you know don't actually matter and will be perfectly fine just happen along the way when we should have just gone straight there. I don't know. I don't enjoy that. That kind of stuff happens in the Lord of the Rings too, and I think in Wheel of Time, even though I've only read the first book, but in the first book it does that, and it drove me insane too. So we will see how I feel about the last book. The Died Child trilogy follows the crew of the Tide Child, which is a black ship, which is a ship made out of dragon bones, but the entire crew is sent to this ship for like their death. It's kind of like a jail, and my guess for the plot is that I'm on my second book, and the fact that I have to guess about this is still insane. There is a war going on, and the ships used to be made from the bones of dragons, but dragons have ceased to exist, and it's been about thousands of years now, and the first dragon is spotted, and they have to go get these dragons' bones. They have to go kill this dragon, get the bones, and make their ship before the other side does to help them win the war. I don't actually think that's what this book is about, but that's the summary of the backside of the first book, and that's what I'm sticking with. Honestly, I have a feeling I will be unhauling this series once I read it. It wasn't the best pick that I've ever done for a book club, apparently, but here we are. One book left to go, which we will be reading in April. And then we'll be switching series after that, and if you would like to participate, we will be having a poll after the next live show to help us pick which series we start in June, because we will be taking a month off between every series so that people can acquire the next book series. After that, I read The Storm of Echoes by Christelle DeBose. This is the last book in the Mirror Visitor Quartet. I read this for a Final Book Support Group, which is a readathon type support group hosted by Steph from Steph Loves. I didn't think I had a single final book that I had to read, and then I remembered about this. I had started this a while ago and DNF'd it because I was trying it physically, and I had read the rest of the series through audiobook, and I just couldn't do it. But trying it through audiobook, it was a little better. I will say that this book was kind of a slog. I did not enjoy this book, which is really sad because I loved the first two in this book, and the second one I did really enjoy too, but I definitely think that the first two, specifically the second book, is the highlight of the series. The Mirror Visitor Quartet, something happened and the world was separated into little arcs, and each arc has its own family spirit that passes down its like magical power, magical existence throughout all the generations. So each arc kind of has a different type of power that goes through them. Ophelia is from, I forget her arc's name. She's from this one arc, okay, where she can touch objects and like read their past as well. She's also a mirror traveler and can travel through mirrors. And Ophelia is chosen by the family spirit to be in an arranged marriage with our other character. I suck at remembering names. From the arc of the pole, and there is an arranged marriage that happens, and the pole is not all that she expects it to be. The pole is kind of icy, and there's a lot happening, a lot of politics happening, and it's not the safest place for her to be. And the whole series spirals from there, and that summary does not do justice what the entire series is about, but you don't need, I can't really tell you that, that's a spoiler. This book, the last book, just was really boring. I was talking about how I'm not a character-driven reader, but I needed the characters in this book. This book, the thing I loved about this series was the characters and the setting of the pole. And in the third book, we go away from the pole and we get a new cast of characters, and I didn't overly love that new cast, but I enjoyed them. But in this book, I felt like we threw everything away and we get Ophelia, and that's it. And I don't know, it just takes so long to wrap up, and I felt like it didn't need to wrap up that long. There was literally one part of the book where we could have ended 100 pages sooner because of that part. Like, there's this path to the end, and we're on this path, and then all of a sudden it's like, boop, backtrack. And this book was just boring. I was just bored throughout it all, and that made the ending not satisfactory to me, because I was just like, I didn't care about this whole book. Which, really sad. I will still probably recommend this series because I know a lot of people who have loved the ending. I'm really just here to recommend it because I loved the second book in the series so much. But yeah, the ending really let me down. I gave it 2 stars. I don't know if I said that. Oh, that was the last book I read in March. I didn't read a lot in March. How much have I read? Reading stats. In March, I only read 7 books. I've already read 15 books this month. What is wrong with me? I read 7 books in March, a total of 3,351 pages, which is a slow month for me. I really let the slump get to me in March. April is already way past that, so you're gonna have a really long wrap up next month. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this wrap up really late into the month, but I hope that you enjoyed it. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say that you were here, leave me a fire emoji because, you know, we're sitting by the fireplace. Why not? And have yourselves an absolutely wonderful day.